Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel / video game news. So, we're back up to 5,000 gems, but I have to admit that this is a kind of nightmare scenario with this festival really only lasting 4 days. They really boned this up. Like, it might have made some sense if we had been told or guaranteed that there was going to be a festival every once a month, which maybe that will happen, but they really want you to play just a ridiculous amount. There is also an extra daily login, which I think is a smart move here, where if you make sure you log in every single day, you can get a decent amount of XP, 500, 300, 200, so 1,000 extra gems, so that's 10 more packs. But it's been very difficult through the loner decks to activate spells and traps, where it was fairly easy to activate everything else. Meanwhile, we also have a ton of daily quests just stacking up in ranked. I think I've already watched the spectate for today, so we can just kind of jump into this. But yeah, let's go back here. This ends in 2 days, and if you look at the reward tier here, we are at about 8,000, where we're getting 2 legacy packs each time. Seems like you stopped getting XYZ packs fairly quickly, but we're at about 8,000 of 20,000, where you could just keep on going, and it's fairly difficult to get these medals for that. You can play your own deck and potentially get wins, but since there's really no overlap, it's slower to play the structured deck that I just bought, Rage of Cypher, and actually win than it is to just play a loner deck and get half the rewards anyways. Let's see, we have exactly 10 packs of the XYZ, and I imagine that is probably intentional, that they gave you enough rewards to get 20 packs and that was it. It also doesn't really feel like we're going to get anything new. Wow, that 2 of the exact same cards. Like, it really doesn't feel like we're going to get anything new as a reward at the end of this whole experience for doing the festival, where it kind of feels like there should be some, hey, you participated in this festival, thanks for participating, we're gonna give you this extra bit of gems or extra bit of crafting points. Even I wouldn't mind even a title or a character icon. There is a slight danger here that Master Duel also goes down the route of like Shadowverse, which is a long-running collectible card game, and just has a lot of character icons and skins and card backs and things, and if Konami moves too fast in that direction, and you have the danger of overwhelming players who might want to try and own everything. Although for a lot of players, a lot of this character icons and wall art and things like that, titles, all of those may not be particularly too much of a concern. And like, I have 150 of these, so unfortunately I should have looked at those secret packs to see how many of the XYZ cards we were really missing, but I guess it doesn't matter. This is probably Interesting, you have this XYZ festival, different than Rage of Cypher. Even though I think the cards are exactly the same. Yeah, just having this side art here and wall art and just box art and card back it's a lot of accessories for not a really good reason. Alright, from extra cards we would get 5 crafting points. That seems like a ridiculously small amount of crafting points. Wait, why is this going the other way? It says our current crafting points would be obtained would be 0. I don't get that. Let's see. Number owned. If we look here. We own how many of these? Seems like 6 of these. Isn't that what this number at the bottom means? Let's go to this deck and edit this deck instead. And see if maybe something works a little bit better. Well, interesting, the extra button is disabled here, so there aren't any extras. Can't dismantle. We own 6 of them. Oh. So there are just some straight up cards that we can't dismantle, and we have a whole bunch of copies of these can't dismantle cards. And following cards cannot be dismantled as cards obtained from structure decks or distributed cards. So I would assume I bought 3 copies from structured decks and also got 3 distributed cards. At some point that's going to have to really be addressed as an idea that is just not going to work in the long run. People are going to be really peeved off about that. Anyways, as I said, we don't have a lot of time. So on top of that, I'm starting late today because my macro, which just really just highlights the inconsistency of web pages, my program macro just was not working today on what's on Steam, so I had to manually open all of the things, and I ran the macro multiple times, which means all the web pages are out of place, so it's just going to be a nightmare. One good bit of news is that my replacement RAM sticks arrived very quickly, which I appreciate that, but I'm not sure I really appreciate having to replace them in the first place. This is the first time I think I've had anything other than a power supply die in probably 15 to 20 years as far as computer components. And when you start to go back 15 to 20 years, I was probably so young and inexperienced when dealing with computers, I wouldn't be surprised if I actively was breaking any other element that did break. I do know there definitely were a lot of hard drives that I tried to hot swap in the old days that broke because of that. There is still some weirdness even with modern computer building where you really need to make sure to unplug it from the wall or flip the switch on the back of the CPU power adapter to make sure there's no power going through it, because you just don't want to be messing with things when there's even a little bit of power. possibly going through it. So hopefully I'll put that RAM back in, and then any other weirdness that I've been seeing, which I have been seeing a little bit of weirdness, can be attributed to this kind of bad version of OBS. Oh, and for the accountability section, I did record a couple of episodes of Fallout 3. Got through the Mothership Zeta DLC, where you're basically abducted by aliens and spend the entire time in the DLC on a spaceship instead of in the wasteland, as you would expect in Fallout 3. So it feels like almost, I'd say 65% like a completely different game. It would have made a lot more sense for the Mothership Zeta DLC to either be released as a standalone expansion for Fallout 3 instead of DLC, or released as a completely different game. If Mothership Zeta was the beginning of a Starlink series for Bethesda, then sure, it wouldn't be that long or that good, but it would have moved them in the next step. I think there is definitely, one would hope, this desire to make Starlink so good and just like almost the perfect game just out on its first release, that there's a real danger of doing something like a Cyberpunk 2077, where they just put way too much content into it, or they try to polish it. They try to run before they can walk, effectively. Whereas if Mothership Zeta had come out and that was Starlink 1, then they could have been working on Starlink 2 by now as major improvements. And I don't think I would really hate the idea of somebody making a game that was a 15-hour experience for the first game, people liking it, and then them saying, okay, people responded to this story and environment and this gameplay style, let's make a much bigger sequel. We've seen that in a couple of games where they've said the sequel is 2, 3, 4 times as big. Of course, Bethesda has that problem where they try to make their games these super big games. According to Steam, I've had the game running for over 500 hours for Fallout 3. It feels like I've actually played about 200 hours of that. Although it's probably closer to 100. But yeah, they definitely get rid of a lot of the junk in Project Mothership Zeta, more than Operation, a little less than Operation Anchorage, which was just straight up a video game simulation, where you couldn't really pick up anything at all, and you got health refill stations and ammo refill stations in Operation Anchorage. Mothership Zeta gets back to what the standard Fallout 3 thing is, where you're still finding stim packs and bullets and guns. If anything, you're possibly still falling into the traps of Fallout 3, where there's just too many guns and too many weapons and too much repetition. I walked out of that DLC with, I could have easily walked out with 30 stun batons if I wanted to. Every single alien almost had a stun baton on it, which would have been, I guess, okay if that was the only weapon, but very quickly stun batons stopped being the weapon to use. You start the DLC escaping from prison, so having like a stun baton as a weapon makes sense, and it gives you the feeling that there might be a whole stealth sequence throughout the entire game that you have to do, but no, really quickly you get back to your equipment and you get guns and you're just shooting people for, I would say, at least 80% of the DLC. So it's just back to the normal concept. I can't imagine anybody could really play stealth in Fallout 3 for any long period of time. It's just not really designed for that. Even Skyrim, I don't think you could really play stealth the whole time. Is there anything else that I need to talk about? I guess not. So, as I said, my program was messed up. So I have a bunch of games here that are on the fall list. This Nara Contos de Resistia, for instance, which looks visually interesting, still is in early access. Also, it's Portuguese Brazil only, so there is almost an argument to not have it on the fall list. But my hope was at some point this might get translated, or this might get better received once it comes out of our early access. So I'm kind of leaving it there, making it an exception. Whereas Natural Stories here. Ooh, this looks too much like an asset flip. Plus it has no relevance. So we can take that off the fall list. Then Natural Instincts here. Looks like it's a animal simulator. It's still in early access from 2021. We'll give that more time. Natsuke Chronicles. It's a side-scrolling shooting game from an unknown publisher and developer. I think because that's just not really my style of game, I think I would say no to this. Yeah, it's advertising 10 levels, which tells me basically I wouldn't really want to play it. So we can take that off the fall list. Naraka Blade Point. Is this out of early access? Player versus player game. Okay. This is a PvP game. So that has to leave the fall list. Doesn't look terrible though. It's kind of funny, it has like no coverage. Now I have to remember also to play. And yeah, of course it's going to be slower if I'm not playing, but playing your custom deck is slower in general. And you get 500 medals if you win, or 50 medals if you lose. If you use your own deck, well, you get half of that for wins and losses. If you use a loner deck, but loner decks play so much faster, it's really better just to play the loner decks. I feel like there's a decent chance they are putting you in different pools of players also, whether you're playing with a loner deck or a regular deck. Yeah, this Naraka game, assuming they really have the likeness rights to Bruce Lee, which maybe you don't need that, maybe he's a celebrity. This guy looks like, I think, one of the anime characters, but I don't think he fights with nunchucks. This looks like an interesting PvP, but player versus player experience is going to heavily be built around who is online and who you're playing with. So there's not a lot to review on PvP games, and that's why I don't really cover them or play them. Particularly since most of the games I cover are fairly old by the time I get around to them. And so that creates it even more of a difficult concept. I think we can get rid of Nanoscape here. Like, this feels like this is more just a visual presentation than an actual game. Plus it's free, so this could have been something like a student project. Yeah, It's a collaboration for art and design and science and technology. Yeah, I just don't think this doesn't even really look like there's enough text or words here to make this particularly educational. Nancy Drew, Midnight in Salem. I think at this point I might as well just have all the Nancy Drew games on the fall list, even though you can see that this 2019 attempt at rebooting the Nancy Drew series fell particularly flat. Although, well, what I would say is the visuals look more 3D and look a little bit more interesting, but constantly, even the old Nancy Drew games are very flat in their gameplay mechanics and very flat in their hopes and desires, and that it is effectively the video game equivalent of the pink tax, where if you try to make a game that is even slightly targeted to girls, her interactive is not really trying that hard. Right, this game, Nom Nook, does not really look like anything enough. While I do love puzzle platformer, something that came out and has no user reviews, should probably just be ignored. Something like this at least should be ignored. Namco Music Museum Archives Volume 2. I guess that can go. I always want to be careful I'm not just rebuying the same Namco or old games over and over again. Like, this collection of games is either very unrecognizable or not particularly interesting. Having like Xevious and Dig Dug and Pac-Land, I do recognize some of these games, but they also don't 100% all seem like the top tier. Music decided to change once they did a huge amount of gameplay here. Galaga, in a lot of ways, is kind of a great example. I also noticed, and this is more of my theory, that you get put in a different pool. That's a lot of work to get only 50 medals. Is that I stopped seeing any of the like people that were self-killing and suiciding once I started playing my own deck. And having now like reevaluated just how much gameplay it's gonna take, it's no surprising that there's probably bots here that people have rolled up and made to help people win, because it's really an insane amount of gameplay. I played a little bit yesterday, I played a little bit the day before, and like I'm really going to have to still I'm really gonna have to still try to be very, very on top to get all the medals that I'd like to get. Galaga is kind of a great example of a game here, just to pick one, in that yes, it's historically relevant, but do you really want to play it? Should you really pay $20 or even $4.99 at its lowest for these old games that in a lot of ways are abandonware? It's not like we've had a new Galaga in 20 years. It's not like we've had a new version of any of these games in 20 years. About 50% of my problems with Master Duel would be fixed if it would just automatically end the turn after a few seconds instead of instead of surrendering. And then you run into the Namco Museum Archives 1 here, which is maybe a slightly better collection, but not, I think, that good. Let's see. Pac-Man. You still need to activate as many traps as possible, so it makes a lot of sense to do that. But this 10-star 0 attack, 0 health character So I guess for this, even though this is mixed, I'm just gonna go ahead and put this on the wish list. This would be basically the lowest priority, though. Me spotlighting a collection of very old games is not very informative for most people, because most people shouldn't and wouldn't play these old games in that form factor. There is a better piracy way to emulate old games. Let's see. I think I'd just end this turn because I think this is going to get shuffled into the deck. Is that what it said? Once per turn during a standby phase, shuffle this card into your deck. Yeah. I'm playing the select deck, by the way, that is the worst version. See, that was a 200 attack increase, where yeah, well, let's see. Let's see what happens here. We attack here. See if this guy does anything. He didn't seem to do anything, so we'll give this one an extra 800, and we'll chain with this one to give him a little bit more, and then sure, we'll chain with this one to do a little bit more. That's kind of a great example, though, of how even though there's like 4 set cards, it's still not guaranteed that you could get a 5 chain going. Okay, this game knocking needs more time. GameDeveloper.com says Raven Software QA workers claims that Blizzard wants to thwart unionization efforts. That was the last article on Friday. Storytelling and game design gets the spotlight at these workshops. That's just an advertisement. Roblox's corporation's slow growth is starting to worry investors. Well, these investors shouldn't really have invested in Roblox in the first place, and if anything, investors in Roblox has really, I think, led Roblox astray into doing some fairly shady things from what I recall. It is kind of a prime example too, where there's this insane demand and desire for there's just this insane desire and demand for more and more. What is more and more growth on a product that literally could not have that level of growth even if it wanted to. I thought this deck would have let me special summon with 2 3-star things. Maybe it will. I think he's got a game-ending trick here. What's this gonna do? Oh yeah, he's got everything. Or chain card. Ring of Destruction does 1,800 to each of us, 1,000 to each of us, and then 12 only to me. But at least that gave me like 100 score here, and that was a much faster experience. But you can definitely see how grindy this can get very quickly. Apparently Call of Duty's new damage shield anti-cheat measure turns perps into sitting ducks. Damage shield detects characters in real time and disables their ability to inflict critical damage. Which, I mean, that sounds good on paper. Does it really work is the real question. Here we have a claymation style game on the fall list. Looks like a fishing game. It meets the relevancy requirements. For a 2021 game, though, it looks pretty rough, I'd have to admit, but whatever. I'm not even sure if it really is that claymation in the game or if it's just low polygon in the game. It actually looks like it's just low polygon in the game. Phantom Knight. If I summon this, I should be able to special summon this. It should then let me summon this. So that was 1,000. For 2,000. And then in the turn. Here we have Mysteries of the Darkness, which needs more time. Unless these are new games. This needs more time. This is mixed, so I think we can get rid of this Metroidvania game. I can see why I would have wanted to see people's receptions to this, but obviously reception has been bad. 1999, bunch of languages. We are in kind of a lucky spot where there isn't a real shortage of Metroidvanias. Okay, none of these can activate, so just detach this. Then we're going to detach this to destroy this. While we're destroying that, we might as well bring this guy back to the field. since this doesn't have the effect of... Yeah, so that was a perfect destruction, and I did not really plan for it to go that way. I just got lucky. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend for a second. My very own light here has only one user review, and it looks like it is probably not likely to get much more. $19.99. Steam rating is 59%. I feel like this is probably one of those games that runs really clunky. Visually, there's kind of a lack of polish. The screenshots are not selling it particularly well. I tried to play one game that was a game where you were this like clockworker and time got manipulated, and visually it looked interesting, but the reviews told a very different story, and when I actually played it, I should have listened to the reviews or the lack of reviews. At least that's how I remember that went down. And that, while visually it looked well, the game itself played pretty clunky. Kind of in the exact opposite, we do have a dearth of puzzle platforming 3D games. But I'm still not willing to scrape the bottom of the barrel for that. My Universe Fashion Boutique is mixed, unfortunately. Again, the pink tax, the girl game tax, where quality is just not particularly that good, which that's always a shame. Let's put that back on the field. Darn it. Here we have a game called My Time at Sandrock, which doesn't have a release yet. It looks kind of interesting. Like it might be good. I think it's probably a sequel to My Time at something else. What would it be called? My Time Portia, which is rated very positively. Alright. But yeah, there's not a good reason why My Time at Sandrock would be on the fall list so early. We can wait till that actually comes out. It says it's early access, but it doesn't even have a demo out yet. And then the other question certainly was My Time at Portia, and do I want to play a farming simulator game even if it looks kind of good? I think the answer is no. Like, when you have just no desire for growing crops, farming, and then raising animals, also you have very little desire on that, and you have very little desire on befriending quirky inhabitants in a charming post-apocalyptic land. There's like 2 out of 3 or 4 of those main selling points of that game just are not in my wheelhouse. My Singing Monsters Playground. This looks like this might be a Mario Party clone. We'll see if there's a single player element. It does seem like that, but it needs just a little bit more time. Here we have another visual novel that needs more time. My Little Dog Adventure is mixed, so we can take this off. It is ironic that I'm making so much progress on cleaning up the fall list, whenever my program glitches out and I run it 3 or 4 times. See if we got anything here that possibly could help. I think you have to do this. And then I think you have to do this. And if they let this survive, then I've got to put this on the field and then destroy things. Well, I guess if this is 3,000, we'll just leave this here. Is this one gonna try and destroy this card? Activate that from the graveyard. Maybe return that to the hand. That'll buy me like 1 turn. I don't think I'm gonna have anything here that's gonna defeat this. So it is so ridiculous that so many people are playing these cards. This is kind of the first time I've ever really felt like there is an actual need for Ash Blossom and Maxi to be banned or limited, because we're just seeing far too many people play it. Almost every single game it's getting played. Both are getting played at least a couple times. Anyways, this game is mixed, so my little dog adventure unfortunately has got to go. Visually, that does make the most amount of sense. This Neon Horizon Eclipse, I guess I'll give it a little bit more time. Neon City Riders. I think since I have so much left over anyways, I'm gonna give this a little bit more time too, even though it does technically make the metric. I'm not sure I really would want to play this game because it looks like an RPG, and having just burnt myself out on RPGs. And that's certainly a way this could go, is that we could find, after spending over 100 hours playing Fallout 3, playing an RPG, I may be so burned out in RPGs that I clear out the fall list of any other RPGs that are mediocre, and then I start playing, then I would potentially move over to like a different style of game and get burned out on that, and then clean up the follow list for that, which that would be a very natural progression to say, hey, here is my ever evolving learned desires as far as what's the next kind of games I really want to play. Here we have a game called Neo Kaiju, and it sucks that this is mixed reviewed. I really would like this to be better. It's free and it's 60% positive, so that probably means it has to be relatively pretty bad. But what it looks like is that you run around and do procedural generation of destruction of buildings as a kaiju monster, and that sounds like a fun concept, but it looks like a concept that was not implemented particularly well. Neo Geo Pocket Collection needs more time. Nemesis Mysterious Journey 3 is mixed. And I think Mysterious Journey 3 is part of a whole Mysterious Journey series. And I'm not sure if of the Mysterious Journey games I don't already own the other ones, or maybe this is a different developer. Mysterious Journey, if I recall correctly, is an attempt at doing something like Myst, but is sadly kind of a pale comparison to Myst. And as such, doesn't seem to really work. Like, I don't think Mysterious Journey 1 is particularly well received. I don't think Mysterious Journey 2 is particularly well received. I'm having a real hard time even finding them. And me taking a little bit longer to do every turn isn't really going to convince the developer to the other player, not developer, the player, to really go that way. So I guess I'm going to leave this one on the follow list. Seemingly, Mysterious Journey 1 and Mysterious Journey 2 are published and made by a completely different developer and publisher, because they're not even listed. So either I purchased those games. Visually, this doesn't look terrible, but puzzle wise it seems like it's pretty rough. Of course, you run into this other problem where the next game from Cyan, the makers of Myst, that's supposed to come out, has taken probably 5 to 6 years now, and they're just moving a little too slow for their own good. So it has left a gap in the market. There's been a very long-running gap in the market, as it were, for Myst-like games. A gap that you have to put a lot of effort into to make good puzzles so that they're actually impactful. But yeah, nobody has been able to fill that niche desire. Which maybe just means that Myst, which was once one of the best-selling games ever, has completely lost its audience by just abandoning them. And I guess if you were going to ask, what's the one way to get rid of your audience, abandoning them probably is a lot worse than something like Battlefield, which still puts out games every year, even though they've pissed off a lot of their audience. This game, Nelson and the Magic Cauldron, needs more time. Nico Para, Catboy's Paradise, I guess makes the recommendation. And it's not like there is a lot of like guy focused visual novel, otome visual novels specifically on Steam of quality. Of course, the problem with this is the free, almost joke version, although not completely a joke, flip for Nico Para, and all the other Nico Paras, which are also on the wish list, are the more anime moe cat girls. And there is a slight difference here in the moe art style for the anime girls compared to the taller, still slender, still kind of Japanese in build guys, but they tend to be tall, they tend to be slender. They're not really what I would call moe. They're not muscly or anything. They are soft, inoffensive, 5% femboys, I suppose is what you might describe them as. But at a certain level, I guess that kind of makes sense in the creator's minds, at least, in that if you're literally targeting otome visual novels to young maidens, teenage girls, like you wouldn't probably want to overwhelm them with giant muscly characters that they don't see in real life or couldn't really relate to. Here we have a game on Steam called Negative Nancy. Negative Nancy is a choose your no adventure, an interactive sitcom. I don't know if there's really a game here I want to play, but as far as a split path kind of visual novel being animated in a very different style, which I appreciate in attempts to do different styles. I don't know if this is particularly a great art style. It definitely feels like it's pixely paper cutout. And very possibly is way too expensive for what I suspect is a fairly short game. But it meets the requirements, so I'm going to add that to the wish list. There definitely are depictions of very young, very moe, or something I would describe as much more moe guys slash boys, but I've never seen a otome visual novel really focus solely on those types of characters. It is very possible that the makers of visual novels are very much stuck in their own minds and they copy each other and will just do the same thing over and over again. This was a really long game, and not try different art styles or anything different until it proves to be a really popular thing, which it kind of has no chance of ever proving itself to be a popular thing because nobody's willing to go out on the limb and try something different. Same is true for the moe girls in visual novels, that we've seen thousands of these. Here we have one called Nefasto's Misadventure Meeting No Rose, which looks like it's some kind of point and click adventure game, but it also looks like it's kind of going in a very different direction. Has this whole glitched universe concept. It's early access still though, so it needs more time. So we'll leave that on the fall list. But I really have done kind of a great job of getting rid of a lot of fall list games. Yeah, clearing out the fall list is a lot easier, so it's just that chronologically speaking, it's not very relevant to be talking about a game like Necromundia here, which is surprisingly just barely over the cusp of being considered positive when this came out May 31st, 2021. Also, Necromundia, I believe, is set in the Warhammer 20k universe, although it really is more of a spin-off game. So it's going to be a little weird to put that on the wish list. But, and I definitely would have to think fairly hard about whether really I was going to play that or not. I think we probably need to play a couple more games with this loner deck, and then if I've got all the traps and spells played as far as the daily quests, then I think I'm fairly good. I also need to move over to play a solo game or two and get some of the other daily quests done. This Necroland Undead Corpse says it's a battle royale game. Kind of looks like a tower defense game. Not particularly sure why I would have put this on the fall list. Okay, I could see why now. That kind of trailer caught my eye as far as a creepy zombie girl. Yeah, part of the reason I started late today was I stayed up all last night watching brand new Cherry Flavor on Netflix, which that is wild. I don't know if it's really going to go anywhere as a story. It kind of feels like it's an interesting body horror, like spooky limited series, but it definitely feels like it may be more of a journey than an actual destination as a experience. Let's see, Navia, I'm gonna give a little bit more time to. Seems like it's positively reviewed, but it's not quite over 30, and I'm being, I guess I'll just be a stickler for that. Being a stickler might actually help a little bit to just make sure there isn't too many games on the wish list year over year. Neuro deck here. Psychological deck building card game is an interesting idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's been particularly well received. I kind of want to see why it's not well received. Probably doesn't have enough cards. The creators were more concerned with using the source material themes as a costume for underlying game without taking any care to talk about or inform, if even a little, about the serious source materials they're pulling from and how people can actually deal with phobias such as phobias to the blah 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 blah. Let's see, Phantomites. Do this. There was another suicide character. By all means, I will take a suicide and take that 4,500 reward here compared to getting maybe 100 otherwise. And this is why I have like 150 legacy tickets too, is that there's just so many people trying to suicide themselves with their own deck to get 50 and automate it instead of just trying to play to get 500. And I don't think the ratio is that bad that Yeah, I don't think you have to play 10 games to get the equivalent of losing 10 games, or to get 1 win. Yeah. If on average you were having to play 11 games to get 1 win, then yes, it would make sense to suicide yourself. But then again, if you're automating the whole process and you've just found a way through some cheating app to play the cards automatically, suiciding yourself makes a ton of sense just to speed things up. Yeah, there's another negative review here that says, an inferior game compared to others in the genre, mainly due to lack of content and balance. Alright. So, what this proves is there is a desire around psychological characters, phobia characters, and maybe even putting that in a deck building game, although maybe you use those kinds of characters in a different kind of game. But you have to actually be fairly careful how you go about that, because you don't want to come off flippant, or you don't want to not really address how you would deal with these phobias without and you also don't want to delve into trying to give therapy to a mass audience, which would be unethical. This Net King's Call, I have no idea why this would have been on the follow list. This looks awful. There's better versions of this style of game. Plenty of them I've seen. This Nerthus Enar's Fate, I think, also has to leave the follow list. And yeah, you could always make the argument that a better original idea might be better suited, but a lot of people don't have original ideas. If you consider my favorite cell phone game, Destiny Child, the lewd gacha game, the concept there is incredibly simplistic. At least at the beginning, you're playing as this demon who has been forced into this war to determine who is going to be the next king of hell, and you have to make devil pacts with people to create childs, not the Destiny Child. I think that's something different. They haven't really revealed that yet. But you have to make pacts to create childs to fight on your behalf. And that's the general simple story. With each new character in Destiny Child, they go a little bit further and usually tell a kind of interesting narrative around why this new character, this new child and Devil Pact would have been made, and what's going on in general as far as the King of Hell competition. That basically will never end until the entire game shuts down. But yeah, it's a real simple concept, and then when you look at the characters you can collect, the art style is particularly for like the first generation of characters was fairly simple. Monsters and mostly it's anime girls, and so like they're not bending over backwards to reinvent the wheel. Is that seriously not going to do anything? Alright. Alright. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Nero. It's rated very positively, but it's early access, so I have to leave it on the follow list for that reason. Nerf Legends here. Never gained any momentum at all, which is a shame. You'd think Hasbro, which I assume owns the Nerf license, I think they do, would have put a lot more funding in this to make it a good game and to promote it a lot more, but seems not the case. It's barely been discounted. It's way too expensive. It's got online PvP and single player. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't much there. There is some weirdness in these characters, definitely, but there's also this problem that, do you really need Nerf guns in a video game when every other video game is just going to have real guns, except for something like Splatoon, which is going to be paint guns? And so I think there is possibly some slight value in either doing water guns or paint guns if you're trying to go kid friendly. But of course Nerf has to advertise them as Nerf guns. There definitely have been cases where toys have tried to put more characters and backstory behind their toys, and it's failed fairly miserably. Even Lego has tried to put some like backstory to some specific named minifig characters, and they were trying to make a cartoon that was supposed to come out. I don't know if that actually did come out, but that really hasn't been well received. Let's see. Should probably just go ahead and power up characters and activate traps. So yeah, Nerf Legends is a failure. Neptunia Virtually Stars is mixed. I'm gonna leave this on the fall list as just a question of, as far as if I was gonna buy the Neptunia complete bundle. And I don't know if buying this bundle would include all this DLC or not. It's a rhythm game. You can see it's not particularly that well popularized. I definitely would have to start playing some of the Neptunia games I've already purchased, though, to make any kind of justification around. Interesting. You do still see a lot of that too, where they get busy and then they get distracted and surrender. But yeah, we are just slowly grinding towards 10,000 out of 20,000. This Neon Wing race, I think we could probably say no to. It's fairly old as a game and doesn't seem to have any relevance. Screenshots like this is definitely not helping it either. Honestly, something that looks like an F-Zero racing, or racing on light roads or flying ships on light roads, probably needs that relevancy of being an F-Zero game before I would really give it a chance. This game, Neon Tide, looks interesting. It's free to play. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't actually much of a game here, though. Well, it's a free-to-play game. Unless there's something weird about this. It's a visual novel for free. And these pictures definitely stand out as looking a lot worse. Let's get rid of this. Do that one. And that one. And we'll see if he wants to destroy those cards. And then go ahead and chain. I hate to get rid of this, but I'll do it. So we can do that one. Then no more. I don't think there are too many cards that you have to chain 2 or 3 before you can activate it. So that may have destroyed his strategy. Yeah, this game says it is disturbing, unethical, or triggering content, offensive language, sexual themes, violence, player discretion advised. What it doesn't seem to imply is that there's actually any nudity in the game. And as a visual novel, I'm not seeing any text. So I'm going to just leave this at, it's a free visual novel. If you're interested, check it out. I don't have any reason as a video game critic to bother to try and play it. Next we have Neon Tail, which looks like it's a Jet Set Radio style game, which we've had a couple of these. We've had a couple of these announced. This is early access, but rated very positively, so I'll leave it on the follow list. Neon Noodles. Is this some kind of programming game? It's a programming game that's 94% positive. Do I need to play something that describes it as a Zatch-like in the sense that Zatch as a company makes programming games? That seems like a generic, too weird of a term to try and establish. I think at this point I do not want to play any programming game that has a instruction set that is pictorial at the bottom. This interface does just look kind of bad. Plus this is early access from 2019, so I'm suspecting it actually is never going to go anywhere. So Neon Noodles goes bye-bye. See, next we have something called Negate Tail, which is mixed in the last 31 reviews, but 72% positive overall. So has this been abandoned? Does kind of look like it's got an anime cat girl and some scantily clad characters to advertise what is a fairly generic top-down hack and slash. It's still early access from 2021, so instead of looking at the reviews right now, we'll just leave it on the follow list. I do want to have a check and see what the level of content is here. Yeah, there is no indication of actual mature content, so while you may see some thighs and some cleavage and some belly, that seems to be it. We have about 5 more of these that were extra. Nickelodeon Kart Racing Grand Prix can make it to the wish list. Yeah, there's a very decent argument that Kart Racers 2. So that, I guess the question is Kart Racers 1 on Steam? Yeah, compared to Mario Kart, I guess the Nickelodeon kart racing game would be your best bet. Let's do that, just so we can activate it. From this publisher, you can see Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, Kart Racers 2, Goosebumpers game from 2015. They went fairly quiet as far as Nickelodeon stuff before the 2020. So that, yeah, there's an attempt here certainly to make good games. In a funny way, wow, I just got another achievement for doing something. Nickelodeon really should have been a forefront for video games, and they should have gotten in on it very early, and they just didn't. Alright, so we got all the spells done for 50. We have 2 days left on that. We got some of the traps done. We need to duel in solo mode 1, 2 times. So can we come over here and just choose this? Even this is probably going to be fairly slow. If I do a practice, we need to find out if this counts. So a practice is just going to tell us exactly what to do. And really, I should have done the practice on one of the very first solo modes. Activate World Key Legacy. Now, special summon that. Activate that effect. I should be able to special summon this, because these are the cards that can summon things if 2 cards are in a row. And move over the battle phase and attack. So does that count as dueling in solo mode? Because that's kind of what we would want to see happen. That we would just want a very simple thing. Yes, it does count. And seemingly missed one. So, yeah. We just click tutorial, practice 1. This is probably the easiest thing. Although this may not be the easiest thing. Yeah, this is actually slower because it's actually teaching a lot more than the expansion. Yeah, you're actually going two turns here. Yeah. It's taking way longer. So that practice is probably not what you want to do. Maybe you just jump to something like the Absolute Monarch and do this practice. Or it might be just dual strategy. I think the case here is that this one might be able to attribute these three things. Maybe not. And apparently I could do an additional summon there in that turn. This is a lot. So and they don't even care that you can activate something in the graveyard. So suffice it to say, I'll have to do some research as to which practice mode is just going to be the quickest. But at the very least, it gets rid of that daily quest. And that daily quest fairly quickly. And we're back to spectate live. Ranked duels, duel and ranked duels, activate traps and ranked duels, win a ranked duel twice, duel and ranked duel, win a duel and ranked duel. Yeah. That does leave us in a situation where I'm gonna have to play a couple of ranked duels just to get the daily quest down. It really is just overwhelming. Though it's too much for just a weekend experience. This game needs more time as far as on the fall list. This claymation point and click game is from the writer designer that brought you Tales of Monkey Island, which is not the people that really worked on any of the other Monkey Island games, but don't think Tales of Monkey Island was particularly bad, so since this is positive, I'll put this on the wish list. Next Space Rebels is seemingly a Kerbal space program game that actually looks perhaps a little way better. I don't know if I'd ever really have enough energy to play a Kerbal space program sequel, but yeah, it has single player. Seems like the vast majority of the game is animated, but there's a full motion video cutscene or two that seems to happen. So I'm willing to put this on the wish list, but I would probably guess that this is probably going to be one of these games that would have to be gifted to me for me to actually play it. This Newton's Cradle puzzle game, I think I would probably just leave this on the follow list. If I start getting desperate for minimalistic puzzle games again, I'll know where to look. Newt 1 here. I'm gonna have to 3D platformer that's musical. Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to just make a executive decision here to either say yes to this game or no to this game. And for $1.99, I think if we can get it discounted, that can be a yes. Yeah. Having to spectate every day is ridiculous. I did, by the way, spectate on like I spectated one day and it just showed me a suicide game completely. Didn't even really show me anything interesting or educational. So clearly they're not heavily curating the games that are being shown in spectate mode. Alright, next we have a game here called New World Horizon, which, yeah, I think we can say no to that. It looks just like a crafting survival game. And at this point, even if there was a new Minecraft, I probably would miss it. Here we have a game called New King, which I think we can say no to that also. Then Nevermore the Chamber Door, I'll give some more time to. And then that finally starts to get me to a point where we're starting to talk about actual video game news. And even though I started fairly late on this Monday, it's not like a lot of news happened over the weekend. And as such, I don't think there's a ton to talk about. Although I vaguely think there was something to talk about. Right. Yeah. I think what you do is you put this on the field as a defense. Video Games Chronicle says Starfield's developers discussed the game's NASA punk aesthetic, which, okay, I will say the visuals as far as Starfield look good. The question is, really, when you get in that game, are you going to create a custom character with custom stats? Or is it just going to be a character appearance customization? Are you going to be able to play as different classes or races? Will that affect how things are? Are you, at the end of the day, going to get in a spaceship, fly to a planet that's just going to be this kind of open world Skyrim field with a lot of dungeons around it? Or is this a whole different type of game for a whole different type of people? The fact that they're talking about the visuals and not the gameplay is a little scary, so you would want to see a follow-up for this. You can see there's a robot here, there's a guy, there's a girl, there's another guy. Are we even going to land on planets as the main areas? Or are we going to fly from spaceship to spaceship, and every spaceship is going to be some kind of procedurally generated dungeon? Being called Starfield, it wouldn't be crazy to make that assumption. I don't think I can attack anything with my current... Hey, I can attack something. Well, by all means, let's attack this and see what happens. I think I may have just summoned a Blue Eyes White Dragon for him. Maybe not. Moving on, Capcom will announce Street Fighter 6 on Monday, it's claimed. Which, okay. There is definitely a question as to where the story is with Street Fighter and where that time or where in the timeline and the storylines Street Fighter 5 and 6 are. Or I guess particularly, is that story moving forward as much, well, as little as a storyline has to move forward in a fighting game. Video Games Chronicle says Phil Spencer reportedly started Activision talks days after the explosive Bobby Kotick report, which that was kind of the assumption for me, and I imagine most people, is that they started to seriously talk about an acquisition. There is still my theory that this might be massive corporate protectionism to save Activision Blizzard from potentially getting broken up by the government and embarrassing large corporations and billionaires, versus this being Phil Spencer seeing a good deal, as Activision Blizzard's stocks are very cheap, and so this would be a prime time for acquisition. Most companies that acquire a company are going to look for as much of a discount as possible. Nobody wants to buy Apple at its peak. They want to buy it at its dips, as far as Apple stock, and whether that is to buy a controlling share of stock or whether that's just to buy individual stock. That's pretty much always true, unless you're just trying to do a hostile takeover. And at a certain point, if the deal went a little bad but it was somehow approved by the government, which assumptions are it will be approved by the government, Microsoft may have several rounds. They could potentially have had several rounds of buying stock and then done an effective hostile takeover if they could buy controlling shares. And that would be probably one of the exceptions in which you would buy stock no matter what the price is, as if you're actively trying to have a hostile takeover. And it might be kind of good PR if it did look like Microsoft was trying to do a hostile takeover, but I don't think it's good enough PR. We have a story here. I think we already talked about the damage shield. Call of Duty Warzone is giving players God mode to deal with cheaters, which that's a odd way to describe it, but I mean, but it's kind of accurate. It's referring to Doom's God mode these days, decades later, is a little antiquated. A new Elden Ring overview trailer shows off the lands between, which I assume is an area, a region. You've got this character with like a magic staff and seemingly one arm. Personally, though, I have no reason to be hyped about Elden Ring, and I don't think anybody really should be hyped when the game is less than a week out. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Detective Pikachu 2 is still in development, according to a recruitment site. I don't see any reason why Detective Pikachu 2 wouldn't be in development. It was probably a decent seller. So as a movie, and they're already doing a Mario Bros. Movie, so yeah. The only thing you could be kind of concerned about is Ryan Reynolds just having too much on his plate with the pandemic to actually accomplish a Detective Pikachu voice acting it, but he does seem to be kind of a workaholic. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out in a couple of years and says he was just overworking himself and he's burnt out. This is interesting to me, at least. Another $229 Nintendo Lego set has been spotted online. That's not this picture, though. This is the already existing NES Lego idea set. Like, I own this. I put this together. I'm fairly familiar with it. So, yeah, I'm not seeing anything here that would be different. If they say, for instance, put like one more dial here, that would be weird. Or if they change the color of the wood pieces, that would be weird. But it's still really showing Mario on the TV and Mario on the cartridge. Now, when I did build this set, it says the leak also includes 8 other sets, which are presumably another Lego Mario series. Like, if the thing I wanted to see with this set would have been more of these 1x1 studs on this carousel conveyor belt that goes around. It spins around while you pull this crank. I would have wanted to see that change and a new character custom piece for other Nintendo games. Excuse me. There. I bought these cough drops called Fisherman's Friends, which I heard were really good and powerful. And they're like 10 milligrams of menthol in it, and it's just like, oh, that is too much. Even one of them is just really, really too much to put up with. There's no candy or sugar in them. So they are these little gray compressed blocks that just dissolve in your mouth, compared to the hard candy you have in a cough suppressant cough drop. You know, I'm trying out this new deck right now, but I may very well have to go back to my previous deck. Back to the Lego though. Since this conveyor belt only goes 2 ways, it could, I guess, go backwards with maybe some modifications. I think it's built so it actually won't go backwards if you spin it the other direction. It really could only cover side-scrolling games as much. So something like Duck Hunt, where it's a one-screen game, wouldn't work, even though a zapper and a Duck Hunt screen would be interesting. You could possibly have some elements of Duck Hunt work that way, but you'd have to get really creative about it. Like, in a lot of ways, since Duck Hunt is a single screen thing, you probably would want to let's see. Do I want to activate this? I think I do. Usually you do. Target 2 cipher cards you control. Their level become 8 until the end of the turn. Are these both cipher things? Yes. So you make that and that. And this one. And then you want to bring out this, with this, and this, as such. Can't activate its effect. Ooh, this is going to be great. I'm going to go ahead and just summon the 10-star one, but I think I could have probably summoned the 9-star one and then the 10-star one. And then activate this on this. And then activate this on this. And then I don't think we can go any further, but we're at like 6,000 damage here. So yeah, for something like Duck Hunt, you'd probably just want one screen and then a break, and then you spin it around, and then it goes from the ducks to the discus, and then you would just have like the duck there. Or you can make a screen that just pops in over this to show a single screen as a panel. But yeah, if you were to get Mario Bros. 2, Mario Bros. 3 as platformers, that would work fine as an expansion to this. And I imagine somebody probably has made some modification. Honestly, if you just gave me a bunch of cartridges with custom stickers on them, that would be fine too. So let's see what this leaked video seems to show. We have your general Mario boxes, and it seems like this would just be more Luigi's Mansion style boxes for this gameplay sets, which that's nothing that interesting. So, seems like all we have here is a set number for 229. I guess if you compare the price, $229 was the Lego NES, and $169 was Question Block. I bet the $169 didn't sell as well as NES. You know what it could be, though, and it's fairly obvious. Make it a Super NES, or make it the NES version 2, although I don't think that many people are that nostalgic for the NES version 2, that was the top loader and kind of had a rounded thing. I think you would move over. It would make a lot more sense to just move over to the Super NES. Every year you could have a Super NES, a Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii. It would be 5 years before, 5 years and over $1,000 before you would have had all of the major ones. At some point they would want to throw in a Game Boy too, if they were going to go that route, and I wouldn't be surprised if the $130 price tag here is a Game Boy, or the $69 price tag here. There's still this odd kind of separation between the Mario Lego sets for kids and the Mario Lego sets for parents. But I'm interested in seeing where that goes. Of course, I probably don't have to wait that long either. Let's see. So, yeah. So I probably shouldn't speculate. Personally, for me in Lego, though, I'm still fairly slow and behind as far as building the Lego shelves, and I haven't even built the Lego table / out of shelves that can be rotated 90 degrees. So until I get that built and really reorganize all my current Legos, it's not really the wisest of moves to get hyped about buying even more Legos. And the amount of Legos in general I've been buying over the past 5 or 6 years has just gotten higher and higher. Let's see. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Capcom has officially revealed Street Fighter 6. More details on the next installment will be revealed this summer. So they just announced that it is coming out. That's kind of a weird logo for Street Fighter. That is definitely not the logo I would expect. You have these muscles and these sweat and this visuals all zoomed in, but is that something you really want to see in a video game? And is that something you really are going to see in a video game? Or, yeah, that logo seems completely out of place. It feels like that would be a logo you would do for a pair of shoes. Street Footwear 6. Well, I've been defeated. Yeah, that's a kind of great example of having an ultimate defense. Still isn't perfect. That was a penultimate defense, if anything. Yeah, I heavily imagine that Street Fighter 6 is going to be fairly zoomed out, and you're not going to see rippling muscles and sweat coming off in the final product, particularly when they start having to zoom the camera out, render backgrounds, add extra background characters, which is something you would expect in a Street Fighter game. It would be very weird if all of a sudden Street Fighter 6 is done in an octagon and it's not fighting on the street. Like, it's in the name. If it's done in an arena, if it maybe Street Fighter 5 was done in an arena. I don't think so, but if they're getting so far away from their namesake like that, that's a problem. Let's see. Capcom announced a 10-game fighting collection anthology. Includes titles never before released in the West or ported to home systems, which that is the right way to do an anthology, certainly, is to partial nudity, interesting. Bring out something new. Here you can see Darkstalkers being focused in on that. And if anything, that is definitely the game I think people would want, is some of these Darkstalkers, Night Warriors games. In a lot of ways, it might not be a bad idea to test the grounds to bring back the Darkstalkers series. And I guess some of these are being labeled as Vampire Warrior games, so they're not actually in that series. What this really highlights is the Capcom fighting system definitely had a lot of these weird games that you may have run into. I know I ran into a couple of them in my childhood, but if I had tried to talk to anybody about them, nobody would have ever recognized them as being a game that even exists. I'm a little surprised nobody's tried to just remake Street Fighter 1 and just reboot the whole Street Fighter series. Although I guess for a fighting game series it doesn't quite make the most sense to... where's my mouse cursor? It doesn't quite make the most sense to try and bring out a remaster or reboot, since you're just always iterating. So yeah, this does look interesting. In a lot of ways, it is still just a collection of ports being emulated. We can't really deny it. Let's try this again. Base up an attack with our level 8 guy. Half his life to negate that. Let's see if we can activate something out of the field, out of the ground, or the graveyard. All I can do is really do that, I guess. This definitely feels like a good collection here, though. They're not trying to cram in too much junk. Cyberbots is the least recognizable, or Red Earth is the least recognizable game, and they're throwing you an anniversary edition of Street Fighter 2 as a freebie. Puzzle Fighter 2, not Puzzle Fighter 1, not Gym Fighter. Super Gym Fighter, though. I don't know if there was a Gym Fighter. And then these are all Darkstalker games at the beginning. They're just named differently. Darkstalkers, Night Warriors, Vampire Hunters, Vampire Savior, and Vampire Savior 2. I think all of those are probably in the same universe, for as much as there is a canonical universe. Alright, well, definitely doesn't seem like that deck is particularly good. So let's just select this deck again and go back to playing what we know sometimes wins. Let's see, Video Games Chronicle says 68% of Horizon Forbidden West UK physical buyers paid $70 in £70 instead of the cheaper upgrade. The U-turn by Studio means that the PS4 version comes with a free upgrade to the PS5. So effectively, you have to plug in your PS4 if you still have it, to get the cheaper version where you're getting charged $10 extra for kind of nothing if you don't. So yeah, there is also, according to Linus Tech Tips, a hack that came out for the PS4 to what is that called? I've forgotten. Jailbreak? Yeah. There was a hack that came out to jailbreak PS4s, but if you've connected to the PSN, they've already put out an update for it. So if you've got a PS4 right now, I would say unplug it from the internet, particularly if you haven't turned it on in the past couple of months and you want to hack your PS4 to run emulated games like RetroArch and I guess homebrew apps, and also I guess downloaded ROMs if you really want to go down that route and just straight up steal PS4 games. I'd say unplug it from the internet, turn it on, see if you can disable it auto connecting to PSN or whatever you have to do, because you do kind of have to connect to the internet to use the hack, as it seems, through the web browser and through plugging in a USB dongle for some reason. It's a weird one. It's a weird out of bounds exploit. I don't know if there are the non-reversible E-fuses in PS4 like there are in Xbox Ones and Xbox Series X's, where once a firmware is installed, an E-fuse is blown and you can't revert to it. Otherwise, it would probably be the case that you could go into a special recovery mode and install an older version of the firmware to the PS4 to then hack it. I have not used my PS3 in probably 10 years now, and that just really highlights that I haven't watched any physical DVDs or Blu-rays in that time. And so I probably, once I have no more other projects to work on, will try to just hack it to get it to play RetroArch games and just load it up with a bunch of like ROMs. Although I don't know what the state is really for particularly like the Dolphin emulator on the PlayStation 3 or any of the RetroArch cores on PS3. I'm sure it can play like Super NES games and things like that, but you might still run into the same problems you have with the Raspberry Pi, where it's not quite powerful enough with the PS3 cell processor, it's not optimized enough with the PS3 cell processor to actually run Nintendo 64 games or later in a good manner. But I would prefer to not just end up having to throw away a PlayStation 3 or have it sit forever as a Blu-ray player. As a Blu-ray player now, a PlayStation 3 makes a lot of sense. Although I would have a hard time justifying buying a PS4 on the cheap so I could hack it and use it as a Blu-ray player. So yeah, it would make a lot more sense if I didn't have Raspberry Pis, which frankly right now it is pretty difficult to get a Raspberry Pi at the right price for it to justify doing that. So if you didn't have any other console, if you were in a GameStop, if you could get a used PS4 real cheap, and maybe you would get a few PS4 games there, or if you already own a PS4 and you're done with it and you've moved on to a PS5, then it would make a lot more sense to hack it. for playing retro games. Or if you just need another retro playing platform because you have another TV or you have another kid that you want to play retro games. I think there is a pretty high value in getting kids excited about playing retro games when they are very young, before they lose interest in playing old games in favor of playing Nintendo Switch games. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says 6 new Pokemon announcements will be made this week, but no Pokemon Legends Arceus news is currently scheduled for Pokemon Day. So last year, I believe the 6 announcements, or the announcements that happened for Pokemon Day, were fairly small announcements. So I wouldn't be surprised if 3 of them have to do with Pokemon Go, Pokemon Home, updates to maybe even Sword and Shield or something like that. Apparently Horizon Forbidden West is putting up more statues to advertise this. Advertise the release of their game. So we had already seen a statue of Alloy, and now we're seeing a Claw Strider statue. I have to assume that these are probably just mostly foam, they're movable. Seems like they're going all over the world, starting with UAE, Dubai, which, yeah. Also going to Moscow, which honestly I would not be going to Moscow at the moment for anything. Oh yeah. It's a real instance of where you should ask the question, what is the value of advertising? Because to me that feels like very little sales will be generated for a lot of effort and money, but I have no idea, and I don't think advertisers know really. They almost certainly gave a few $1,000,000 to a advertising company, and in that process the advertising company decided to put out the statues. If I was going to get really tinfoil hat in a conspiracy theory, I would really wonder if perhaps this isn't a case where the publishers for Horizon Forbidden West, which I think is it EA? Yeah, I think it's EA is the publisher for Horizon Forbidden West. It might be that they are trying to run up the budget and the expenses through advertising the game to say that it was a failure. There might be some self-sabotage going on. That would be a tinfoil hat conspiracy you could certainly consider. In the same way that if you know a movie is going to be a flop and you are trying to, I guess, hide money or screw over a producer or director, you could do that by spending a lot of that money on advertising, just promoting a movie that it wouldn't possibly recover that amount of money. The last time I imagine something like that has really happened, though, would have probably been in the era of like an Adam Sandler movie or something. I wouldn't expect it to happen that often. Alright, so we got 1 in 4 chance. 1 in 3 chance. Is he gonna flip something else? 1 in 2 chance. What? It has to be a face-up card? Seriously, I cannot destroy any of these. Ugh. If I win here somehow, I'm gonna be shocked. Right, what can we do here? We can add that and then we can shuffle. We can summon that. We might as well add this to our hand because we can't do anything else. Alright. Can activate this. Special summon that. Drop that one. And then drop that one. Go ahead and activate this to protect this card. See how this works. Finally we get a victory, but man, is that a struggle. Like, we just don't have time for it. Plus, the struggle to get 3 rewards here is way more than to do the festival. So it really is rather questionable whether or not you shouldn't just ignore the daily quest and let them stack up and potentially miss some daily quests in favor of just doing the festival. This should definitely have bought me some time though. And so now all that's left would be to win 1 more ranked duel, which we can just do that later, and activate 3 more trap cards. And that, I like that sound certainly, but it really isn't giving me that many gems. We've also gotten some new secret things. When your opponent monster attacks, your opponent takes damage. We need to do that more often. Take control of your opponent's monsters. We need to gain more life points. We need to equip more cards. Yeah. As far as finding secret packs, I don't know if there's any redundancy here or if there are actually over 100 separate secret packs in the entire game. Of course, these unlimited missions you don't have to worry about. Yeah, all those rewards barely got us up to 5,800. Well, it would have been nice if we were at 6,800. Of course, I can always be more greedy. Speaking of being more greedy, maybe not really, that was just a good transition. Square Enix is considering creating HD 2D remakes of more Super NES games. Live A Live was selected as one classic title to get the same art style as the Triangle strategy. Which, okay. I think you probably would have diminishing returns with that fairly quickly. A major Assassin's Creed Valhalla update will be released on Tuesday. If you're interested in that, check out Video Games Chronicles. GameStop is currently selling Xbox Series X consoles online. Yeah, I got an email for some kind of bundle from them for that. Elden Ring's global release times have been confirmed, including an early start for some PC players. Let's see. Once per turn I can banish this and make it stronger, but I won't do it on the first turn. So yeah, I guess check this article if you care about the release times. There's a whole map here of where it's going to be released. Halo Infinite's mid-season update will include multiple campaign improvements. And then the latest edition of Steam Next Fest will launch with hundreds of game demos, although the Steam Next Fests really don't seem like they are much of anything as far as actual sales for games. I tried to join a group of like Steam Deck fans on Facebook, and there's like 5 meme posts of people canceling their pre-orders on the Steam Deck, and that seems to be all anybody was talking about. So I think it really was a case of it's just being too early, since Steam Decks aren't really hitting the hands of average consumers yet. Steam Next Fest is a week-long event ending February 28th, so basically today is when it should be happening. I'll have to check that, but it doesn't seem like much. Let's see. Do we want to activate traps? We want to wait until this one is about to attack and then activate a trap. Here we have a game on Steam called Ninja Ken, which again, it will just be yes, no, and this one's on the fall list. Oh wait, this actually is still more fall-less games, isn't it? Well then, reevaluating it from that perspective, is there relevancy here? I'm not even gonna consider it. Think too much about it. So is this Nine Witches game also something? It's point and click, it's rated very positively. We can put that on the wish list. Come on. Here we have a Nina Aquila Legal Eagle Season 1, which is a visual novel 4K game, but it looks like it has some RPG elements and seems like it's all over the place. I'm gonna give this some more time, but it does feel kind of all over the place. Here we have Nimbus Infinity is mixed, which from the looks of the screenshots and the reviews, that can leave the fall list. I'm just not playing. Let's see. Ninhong Hongo Heroes. I don't know why this would have even been on the fall list. Because it's a learn Japanese game. Alright, well, I'll leave that on the fall list. Nightwalker 2 needs more time. Night Reverie is rated very positively. So that can go to the fall list. It's out of early access, right? Alright, let's do this. So apparently that card couldn't have been activated with the target anyways. Here we have a game called Night of the Scarecrows, which says it's a hardcore, old school first-person shooter. It doesn't really look too terrible, it just has no relevance. And frankly, I don't want to play a hardcore first-person arena shooter, so that'll leave the fall list. Next we have Night of the Dead, which is still early access, so I'll leave that on the fall list. Night of the Ravager. I think I'll just activate this just to save myself some frustration. At least we get a couple trap cards played. Let's see. Summoning this. I don't think it lets you summon that. So, Knight of the River Rive Rager is, I guess, the name of this. It's free. It's English. It's well received. It might be related to My Beautiful Paper Smile. So we'll add that to the wish list, although, in all fairness, free games would make sense. And so here we had a game that has just been completely removed from Steam, which gives us the advantage of making it to Steam's front page. And yeah, again, the blue is getting darker and darker and feels very far from the blue that we see in other backgrounds. Maybe it is just a case that they like to play with blues, particularly this animated background of blues has changed things. Now I know my page is zoomed in a little bit, so it's probably not exactly how things would look on the front page for most people. Hey, they finally figured out this trick on Steam, and I think this requires a applause, certainly, to finally start to see this screenshot may contain mature content, because nobody needs to come to a page, the front page of Steam, and see nakedness. Even if you've opted in and logged in, it's just a landmine to run into. It's different when you click on the game and you get the pop-up and you get the warning. But yeah, it really should be a more repetitive opt-in thing. Yeah, There definitely are adults out there, and I would count myself on as one, where I would not particularly open certain web pages or browsers or apps on my phone if a kid was in the room, just for random fear that some Facebook friend or something would post something a little risque, and then all of a sudden there's trouble. What could be very extensive trouble. I'll try this again. I guess the question is there any value in doing this in the first turn, or should you just let somebody attack you completely and then bring it out on the second turn? Looking at the next vest here, yeah, it seems like there is more of a focus on just showing live streams, which I wouldn't be surprised if we are going to hit a point where Steam tries to be its own Twitch competitor. There's a bunch of demos that apparently are coming soon or are out. There just does not really seem like there's anything here though, as far as a reason to engage with the storefront and buy things. This is all just about pushing wish lists, which obviously at some level like obviously at some level maybe the wish lists are more important than than I would think they were. Right. Let's go ahead and summon this. Set this. Is it worth it to potentially destroy a card? I think it is. There is a card, by the way, that you can detach into the graveyard, and then its effect will its effect will reattach it to a character. Right. Let's see. Interesting option, but I'll take this spell trap card first. It's in that turn. So like under the action category, it doesn't seem like too much changes on the page. You're getting a few more games that have been categorized under action, and a few more boxes to actually talk about specific demos. Here you have like a fully clothed guy and then topless girl. Seems like there's been very little curation as far as what demos were included and what demos weren't, which in all fairness, Steam doesn't want to curate anything, so if we're going to get a bunch of anime games and a bunch of sex games and a bunch of low effort asset flips. I guess that's just reflective of what the rest of Steam is. But yeah, here you have a pre-purchase for Far Changing Tides, 10% off. Interesting it's being labeled as pre-purchase too. That seems new. So, if anything, this festival really seems to be highlighting some slight changes in the way Steam might be just presenting itself, little behind the initial appearance modifications. Which that's probably a step in the right direction that will lead towards the eventual re-release of Steam. Again, everything here is black. There really is no blue background. Seems to me like they are sticking to just a few categories too. I wouldn't be surprised though if you hover over some of these games and you still get nudity in the screenshots. And it's always been my opinion that it should just be censored completely in the screenshots, with the understanding it wouldn't be censored in the real game. Detach that. Go ahead and just destroy that. To destroy that. Alright, let's try this. He has no attached material. Bringing out the level 4. Let's see. Attach 2 materials, target 1 face-up monster. Its attack becomes half of its current ones. Bring that back to the field. 2. Attach that one. We can just go ahead and destroy that. We'll just go ahead and destroy that. And win. Take a victory. Any opportunity to take a victory we should take, so. And that felt like a fair game. But compared to the Suicide games, like kind of 2,000 less experience. And yeah, still a ton of stuff here. There's just this problem, certainly, though, that you run into with this is none of these games are going to be recognizable. most of these games probably won't ever even put out a press release that gets talked about. Conan Chop Chop is the only one I've even recognized so far. So just because they kind of have a bad advertisement plan, I would say at least 82% of these games are dead in the water before they even launch. And yeah, I get it that they probably a lot of these people didn't know there was a Vampire the Masquerade DLC or spin-off. It's just, I guess at any point there could be another Vampire the Masquerade game though. And it may be made by a completely different team or group of people. But yeah, this doesn't really help the indie people that don't have any advertisement budget, because A, they're not really being encouraged to send out press releases, or maybe they all are sending out press releases and then the mainstream video game journalism just ignores those press releases. That is also very believable. But B, you run into the problem of all of these demos being highlighted and promoted at once. And it's not like Steam is giving you any Steam store points for playing demos or looking at demos. It's not giving you any benefit or gamifying putting things on the wish list. So yeah, there's a real lack of interest that you could build up around this. Wouldn't it make more sense to, instead of just having the discovery queue that shows you, what is it, 6 to 8 games every day, if you want, every time you go through the discovery queue, perhaps it would be better to just have 10 demos come out every new week and highlight new demos a little bit more instead of calling it a next fest, because it's just too big. It's overwhelming, and clearly at the moment I'm fairly overwhelmed as far as games to play. Resurrection of the Mind looks like it is a low effort game that just has a character drawn like Lara Croft. I'm overwhelmed with playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm overwhelmed with playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm overwhelmed with playing Fallout 3. I'm overwhelmed with side projects. And then random things pop up all the time in life, and you can't ever do anything about that, but it's just another thing on top of another thing. And sure, as a YouTuber, it's pretty much impossible to ever take a vacation and take a break. Oops, I should have used that. Whatever. And again, it's just like the only thing it says here is hover over any game and you immediately find a button to install a playable demo. Try one. At the top of the festival page, you'll find the scheduled live streams. In many cases, it's the devs themselves playing their game and answering your questions. Click on the chat icon immediately below the live stream to open the chat window and join the conversation. And then wishlist your favorites. There's just nothing else to the next fest. Now, on the other hand, I have to admit, if Steam became the new place where gamers went to stream, if it literally was, YouTube is just so bad as far as content, video game content creators, that moving over to Steam would make sense. Would be kind of excited about that. I would definitely consider trying that out and seeing how that went. Now, there's a lot of questions, certainly, because while Steam seems to be streaming their own service probably through YouTube or Twitch or something already, for them to take it all on themselves, they have to then be able to be willing to pay to run ads. And I would assume the amount of ads run on Steam, on some like streaming Steam YouTube competitor, would mostly just be Steam ads for other games. And so the amount that pays may be a lot less, or it could be a lot more, frankly. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they would need to adapt that idea and bring in other kinds of commercials and advertisers. And so they would have to put a lot of work into making a YouTube competitor, and there really is just no reason to have any faith that Valve and Steam would ever do that. But clearly they do want more video aspects in there as far as live streaming and promoting games. So they've seen some numbers that tells them that is helpful at some level. I think finally to new games. So again, it's going to be yes, no. Breakthrough the Illusion is going to be a no. This Toho game, I think we had already looked at, and obviously it's going to be a no. Simulodrone doesn't look visually polished enough, so it's going to be a no. Let's see, Kamigawa visual novel. I'll put it on the follow list. Can I put things on the follow list? Yeah. Hopefully it hadn't signed me out. Real Life Soldiers is gonna obviously be a no. Come on, activate this. Let's see. Hockey Shooter VR. There might be something to this. It's already on the follow list. Some of these are repeated because I had to do this manually. Soft Star is a shoot 'em up game, so it's not my style of game. So no to that. From Heaven to Earth, I think we had already looked at and decided no. 78 looks like a kind of true pixely horror RPG. Doesn't support English anyway, so that's gonna be a no. Ninjas Against the Machine, I think we said no to. Also, it was close, but I'll stick with that no. Stop the Samurai, looks like nothing. Obviously a no. Brutal Rifters looked like everything, and that was the problem. It was just too asset flippy for its own good. So we said no to that. The Dark Dwellers, I think we said yes to that. Cthulhu Dungeon, English wasn't supported, and we would have said no to that anyways. The Deed of Deception, think was 2 asset flippy, and it was a VR game and online PvP, so we would have said no to that. Paper Wizards. Didn't look like there was enough game. Great Old Souls, just looks like an RPG maker. I didn't realize so many of these would have been redundant. So, Super Toys Off-Road. I'll give it a chance. So I'm just trying to burn through this really fast. So, put that on the fall list. I think we finally gotten to the new games. This Merchant of Finistoria, though, is going to be no. Here we have another Momo is here. Like, this meme character was popular a year or two ago and then disappeared, probably for the better, and seemingly is coming back now, as, or at least somebody's trying to bring it back. I'm definitely gonna say no to that. Emanate, is that how you pronounce that? Emanate? I don't think there's really a game here, but I'm gonna put it on the fall list just to be safe. As we're trying to move fast here. Here we have a Stardew Valley clone that's mixed already, so we can obviously say no to that. And this came out February 18th, so it was just a couple days ago. It must have come out of early access to have so many reviews. Can we really do anything here? Yeah, I don't think we can really do anything else, so let's just go ahead and try and kill as many things as possible and see if the player gets bored. Here we have a visual novel called Bailisa Vasna. It looks like it might be a different language from that. Russian folk tales, visual novel, early access, English and Russian. Do I think that there's a full game here as a visual novel, or do I think this is just asset flip stuff? I'll give it a chance, but I imagine there's not really a game there. Book of Adventum. Looks like it might be something. So I think I have to put that on the fall list, English and Russian. Looks like it might be an action-adventure platforming type game. Oh yeah, I didn't mention, there is definitely a point where in the Mothership Zeta experience of Fallout 3, you are literally just doing the exact sequence that that you do in either Fallout, either Bioshock 1 or Bioshock 2. Like there's a little girl that you're following around and she's crawling through pipes, exactly like the little sisters in Bioshock. At some point you have to get a space suit, kind of like how you have to get the Big Daddy suit. So it's more than even I would say, oh, this is just a parody. It's something where I would really claim that whatever third-party company had been hired to make Mothership Zeta had just played Bioshock and decided to rip it off quite a bit. Of course, they're still doing it in a Fallout way. It doesn't have the story or narrative that like Bioshock does. It doesn't play like Bioshock. Bioshock is still way better as an experience, but it definitely felt like they were just straight up stealing ideas. There were quite a lot of audio logs in the Mothership Zeta, but most of the audio logs don't say anything. It's just like captives have been kidnapped by aliens, and then you get a 30-second sentence of them talking about who they are, or yeah, that's basically it. They just talk about who they are. If we can pull this off. Just do that. Attack here. Activate this. And I don't think I played the right cards there, but whatever. Might be able to pull this around. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam, Legend of the Outlaw Mage, which looks like it's just a student project of a third-person Diablo clone. For that reason, I'll put it on the wish list. It's already rated positively, but only because it's a student project. Otherwise, I would have to get really critical as far as the visuals and probably limited amount of levels, enemies, and abilities, and probably reject it on what seems to be fairly obvious grounds. Where's my mouse cursor? I guess we'll just keep on attacking if he's got nothing he can do. We may just win. Here we have a game on Steam called Project Sphere, which I'm gonna say no to. Looks just a little too neon-y and too weird. Here we have a game called Rydo, which looks like it's a precision platformer or infinite runner. I would lean towards more infinite runner. And yeah, I'm not seeing anything specifically intriguing by that, so that's going to be a no. Here we have another hidden object game, which generically just always a no to hidden object games. We have something called Scuffy Game, which looks like an asset flip garbage game as far as I can tell. Let's see. I don't know how that's going to kill my character, but I think it is. I didn't kill my character, I brought in another character. Alright, so activate this effect to power this up. Move on to battle phase and attack here. Here we have a game called One Way, which doesn't look like anything, so obviously that's going to be a no. Here we have something that looks like it's a Russian hand-drawn visual novel, early access. I'll give that a follow. This would be interesting. Anthropomorphized animals. Yeah, it takes forever, but it doesn't take 10 games forever. It's the thing I have to just keep reminding myself. Pretty much every time I get a new card, it is a new card, but it is a normal card. Which I wouldn't be 100% surprised if you get all the normal cards fairly quickly playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Not that normal cards are that valuable. Yep, this more hand-drawn animations for visual novels might be alright. It's a different way to potentially sell a picture book instead of just trying to sell a picture book the old-fashioned way through publishing and printing and chopping down trees. I don't know if that's... I don't know if that's the greatest way to do things, but... or if that's going to really work. What we kind of know is that text-based games that have no interactive books, effectively, are not really allowed on Steam. And visual novels do require a fairly heavy amount of visuals compared to even a picture book. So they probably won't sell that well either. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called After Hours. It looks to be just an asset flip horror game. Creepy nurse lady chasing after you. Free to play. That's gonna be a no. Here we have a game called Cursed, which has this pixely old retro look to it, and then it's a horror game. It kind of feels like it might just be a dungeon crawler, but I'm not sure it really is actually a dungeon crawler as much as it's just an adventure that takes place in a dungeon. Is it a student project? Well, it's an indie project. So I'll put it on the fall list for being an indie project, and we'll go from there. And apparently Cursed 2 and Cursed 2 has already been made, but maybe not released to Steam, and Cursed 3 is in development. Yeah. Right, activate this. Let's see. See, this guy can just send anything to the graveyard. So with his ability, and all of these having effects when they're in the graveyard, you do have this beautiful sequence. So you can add things to your hand that then discard more things. Of course, that is putting all of your eggs in one basket. But sometimes that works. Next we have a game on Steam here called Greedy Rabbit, which obviously will say no to that. Even if this was a student project, this is... don't think a game worth really playing. And see, that trailer gives you this block animation as if though the game was played on a 6-face cube and it rotated around, but it doesn't. This is just visual gimmickry for the demo. Next we have Soulscape, which is rated positively. So I'm gonna put this on the follow list just to be careful. We may have a ton of games still. Long Road looks like nothing, so we'll say no to that. Fairly expensive too at $20.99. Right. Activate effect. Chain. Set another thing. I assume this is gonna work and actually do damage to him. So that ended the turn and summoned the Blue Eyes White Dragon, which may not be enough anyways. Next we have Traffic City here, which is going to be a no. Then Travel Racer, which we can immediately say no to. Pretty much anything that looks like a rough looking car game we'll say no to. Climb Fall Human Guys is obviously a name confusion game of a low effort clone, so that's also no. So we have Umbra Journey Home, which don't think visually looks good enough for me to want to say yes to it. There might actually be a game here. They've just put a horrible choice of ugly textures on everything, so that's gonna be a no. Brave Dungeon, The Meaning of Justice. It's kind of oddly zoomed in for an RPG game, so I want to give this a chance and put it on the follow list, but I don't know. It still definitely seems like it very possibly is just going to be an RPG game of no interest. Here we have one that's English or Japanese only, no English. This looks like probably a Toho game or something, just a platforming, maybe Metroidvania experience. Here's one that looks like it's a Russian only asset flip horror game, so that too is no. I actually think I would like to see more Russian only games, because at least then I would have some slight faith that there actually is an audience for those kinds of games, and it isn't just trolls making games and flooding Steam for no really good no good reason other than economic warfare. There you go. See how Mirror Force treats you. Of course, I've been putting everything in one basket, so I have no creatures to summon, no spells to activate, no traps to activate. Here we have a game called Let's Go to the Moon, which just looks like a low-effort platformer. Here we have a game called Black Creature, which looks like might be an interesting game. It's oddly tagged as a visual novel bullet hell game, though. And I would call it maybe a top-down twin-stick shooter. The visuals here look very interesting. The gameplay looks confused. Yeah. Seems like there might be a limited number of fights, and most of it is story. I'll put this on the follow list and see if it comes out of early access and how it really would be treated when it comes out of early access, if it comes out of early access. Can this destroy the last hope of our opponent? Let's see. Two of the same trap cards. Okay. Next we have a game on Steam called World Up, which just looks like a low effort farming or city builder. Yeah, looks very asset flippy, looks very barren in general. Here we have a game called Mongrel, which I don't know if mongrel is a term you can even use anymore, or if it's an insult term, but it's in everything. I think I'm going to put this on the follow list just to learn more about it later, as we're just incredibly pressed for time. We're already 3 hours into this stream, and I was really hoping to get somewhere closer to 1,500 points today. I think I'm going to have to spend significant, probably the rest of the day, just playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And while I can play Yu-Gi-Oh! On my phone, it's not particularly better on the phone, it's a little worse. Here we have a game called Collapsion, which looks uninteresting. Here we have one that's tagged sexual content, so let's not show that. It's a jigsaw puzzle. This came out the 19th, so it was over the weekend. There's no real screenshots here that indicate anything other than some cleavage being shown. Yeah, it says the game contains images of girls in their underwear, is as far as it goes. So yeah, I did think it was unlikely that this weekend we would see any actual adult content. And with the whole Demo Next Fest going on, I bet they are going to try real hard to put off anything like that. Okay. I think I just win here. So I think I should just attack. Unless this trap card is Mirror Force. Which it was. Let's see, next we have a game called Mysteria of the World, the Forest of Death, which looks like it is a very differently animated visual novel, and that's always interesting. We're actually seeing quite a lot of those today. 509 English and Russian, we'll see how the reviews go. Here we have something called Unstable, which looks like nothing of interest. Here we have Demon Purge Saga, which looks like it's just a match 3/RPG game. And the idea of potentially purging demons via a match 3 game might be intriguing. If the price is cheap, it's English. I'll put that on the follow list. I don't know how intriguing that really would be, though. I think we can special summon this. Here and here. Put this face up here. And just go ahead and attack. If this does battle damage, we win. If it doesn't, we possibly lose. Let's wait a turn and then play this and then play this. Let's see if that works. Next we have a game on Steam here called Dead Survival, which could be a survival game, but probably isn't, but I'll, just for sake of saving time, put it on the follow list. Here we have a game called Bullet Heat, which looks like a VR shooter game. Again, I think I'll just put it on the follow list. Save myself some time. We made so many choices to the follow list. Adding a few won't hurt. Mind Right here is an ultimate visual novel. It looks good enough to justify a follow. Okay. Once again, we'll activate this and activate this. Well, set this trap here, activate this to kill everything on the field. Activate this. Bring back our guy. Put that in face up attack position. And unless he can do something else, we've won. But we're not moving up in ranks or anything while we're playing the festivals. And boy, is it annoying to have already maxed out our battle pass such a long time ago. Yeah, we're barely gonna get to 10,000 at this rate. Only thing we could do is come back here and see if maybe we've now activated all the trap cards for another 50 gems. So that completes all the campaign stuff and leaves us with just traps and ranked and winning a ranked duel and logging in every single day. Which obviously is also an important thing to do. Of course, I didn't log in every single day, and once again that means I'm not going to get all the standard results. I missed 2 days. Right. So that puts us in a slightly different position where you are better off to just use this deck and hope for some suicides to happen. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Pingo Never Left, which looks kind of like a pixely game. Doesn't really look like much, but I could be tricked. Nope, there isn't much there, so I'm gonna not put that on the follow list. Here we have a visual novel called The Piano That Stops Time, which looks like it's probably a Chinese visual novel. There's not a lot of characters being depicted. Nope, it's a Korean visual novel and does not support English, so we can say no to that. VR Sweet Home looks like it is one of the 3D model waifu dating sim games of no interest. $4.19 is too cheap for a VR game. El Mucho, you have to actually play. Probably just summon that. Then activate this. Put that there. 26. But we can make him level 8. And then we can summon this instead, which is 3,000. Let's go ahead and this time go all the way up the ranks to a 9. Then activate this and destroy this card. I think we want to discard this one first. Destroy that. Don't think I want to do this. yeah. Don't think I want to do this quite yet, so we'll just end the turn there. This game, El Mucho, seems to be just kind of a horror effort on an RPG. The idea of being an RPG character and having more like masked wrestling characters is an interesting thought, though, I'll say that much. Here we have a game called Paper Birds. It suffers a little bit from dark screenshot syndrome, but there might be something here. So we'll see if it gets any reviews. Alright, the good news is I think we are at a point where we could start covering the Gamatsu articles, and then we could do the rest of the games on Steam. And then we would be done because everything was out of order. So I think we had already talked about Relayers demo launching February 25th. Final Fantasy XIV outlines the next 10 years, RPG advancements, graphical updates, and patch 6.x roadmaps. I guess check out that article if you're interested. Elden Ring overview trailer and Japanese TV commercials from Gamatsu. Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z's DLC character Android 21 Lab Coin launches February 24th, which is weird because I would have thought that she was released a lot earlier than that, because they made, I think, a big announcement around her almost day one, I think, of its release of Dragon Ball FighterZ. I think they did. Maybe I'm wrong about that. What in the world is that? 30,000 attack? What do you do to get that level of attack? Save that duel. We'll want to check that later. Insane. 30,000 attack. Moving on, Idea Factory announces new Automate titles, or Otome titles for Switch. A new brand called Alter Gear. So, Cupid Parasite, Sweet and Spicy Darling, and Hakuki Shinkai Tinan no Shou, and then Clap, Kind Love and Punish, Sympathy Kiss, and then several other previously announced titles. If they're creating a whole new brand for Automate Young Maiden, not Otome visual novels, that seems to imply that they're expanding and doubling down. NIS, Nippon Ichi Software, launches a new title teaser website featuring a pixel art game, which I assume the pixel art teaser game isn't just to a larger for sale pixel art game, and is meant to be some kind of surprise to a bigger game. Gamatsu has this week's Japanese game releases: Elden Ring, Atlas Sophie, and more. Of course, this is just the list of the games that came out, not the sales number. So it's pretty stupid to talk about the game releases when you know they're also going to talk about the sales number for last week. I guess new game releases would be helpful if you literally did not know. Let's see. Supermassive Games has trademarked the phrase "the quarry" in Europe, and Koei Tecmo has trademarked KT Spot in Japan. Which, okay. That may not lead to an announcement for quite a long time. Street Fighter 6 has been announced, and my virtual keyboard. I need to disable that. I don't use it enough for it to justify being enabled. Street Fighter 6, of course, being announced. Literally cannot do anything here. And then we already talked about the Capcom Fighting Collection announced, so we don't really need to talk about that again. In fact, that probably is one of the most interesting bits of news as far as video games this Monday. And then Soul Hackers 2 has been announced for basically everything: PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, and PC, not Switch. That is the one thing that's being left out. Of course, I don't know what Soul Hackers 1 is or when it came out. Yeah. These screenshots aren't particularly telling me a lot about what kind of game it is. I would have to just kind of assume it's some kind of Persona-esque dungeon crawler. And this is being announced by Atlas, which in a lot of ways makes it seem like they are taking a step back from making a Shin Megami Tensei game, whether that's a Persona game or whether it's a main story Shin Megami Tensei game, to make basically the same game. That would be my guess, just not in that same narrative universe. I wouldn't be surprised if the Shin Megami Tensei creators are worn out. I'm watching this trailer and it's showing me some anime characters, older looking, not really in the anime style. The actual gameplay though seems like it's just an RPG, action RPG, a lot of guns, swords, kind of high fashion. I don't know if you would call it just high fashion, but it definitely is colorful, kind of weird fashion. And there's nothing here I can do. It does look like there's some monsters, and some of the monsters can be scantily clad. It does look like they might summon monsters out of their chests sometimes. Doesn't really feel too much though like there's much of a difference here between this and Persona, except for maybe these characters are a little bit older. You can see they're drinking and just hanging out. We may start to see more of that, where you kind of have these mid-20s cool visual aesthetics instead of the 19-20-year-old visuals, cool visual aesthetics that we've seen in the past with anime-esque stories. Finally think I can do something. Bring that out. All of these pre-built structured decks are very one note, though. It's annoying to say the least. $3,000. Activate this. Select this. Summon this. 5,000. Oh, there's nothing more to do there. Let's just attack and win. Come on, let me do over 5,000 attack. 1 turn kill. Please don't surrender. If the game knows that there's a high chance of you winning here. Oh, I can't attack. Alright, well. Alright. See what he does next turn. Yeah, I guess there's not really a lot more to say about Soul Hackers 2, other than, yeah, I would like to figure out, did Soul Hackers 1 come on the PlayStation 3 or something, or earlier even? Trying to read this article a little bit more thoroughly instead of just skimming and looking at pictures, which is mostly what I do. Apparently Soul Hackers 2 would be at the 25th anniversary edition for PlayStation 5. So if Soul Hackers 2 is at its 25th anniversary edition, then that means this game was originally released a long time ago. Like an unbelievably long amount of time ago. Man, they really just wrecked my whole strategy there. 25 years is frankly unbelievable. That means it had to have been a PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 experience, and it doesn't really look like that, so I'd have to assume that this this would have to have been a full-on remake of a game that just never came to the West. Moving on, Itara launches March 21st, new gameplay trailer released. I think this is a game I've been trying to kind of keep an eye on. It caught my attention. Of course, with the blur on YouTube, it's hard to see much of anything. It does look like it could be a very interesting Metroidvania game. It is a little demoralizing playing some of these duels and managing to pull off 5-6 card combinations and still losing. The fighting game sequel In Eins Perfect and now Anastasis has been announced for arcade. That sounds very German inspired. And it seems like they've got no screenshots other than this one picture. Apparently this is also a tentative title. Sequel to a 2010 released arcade fighting game that very possibly was only released in Japan, and that's why I've never heard of it. Let's see. Omen of Sorrow is coming to the PS5 and Switch. Feels like that's a pretty old game, too. Yeah, it was released. It's adding revised story content, new endings added to the arcade mode. It was released September 2021 for the Xbox version. Yeah. I honestly think I may have just totally missed this game. It does look like it's a fighting game, and maybe that's why I don't remember it. But that screenshot and these characters don't look recognizable. And that does definitely feel like a name that would have stuck in my head. So yeah, I don't know. Omen of Sorrow, clearly it wasn't that popular. This guy is setting himself up to do a massive amount of damage. Let's see, the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series, Final Fantasy VI opera scene has been updated with new graphics and vocals in 7 languages. Which, okay. It would make a lot more sense to me, this article, if I knew what the opera scene is, but I don't. And then GameDeveloper.com basically had one story, according to my program. Epic Games is offering hundreds of its QA testers full-time roles, in kind of sharp contrast to Raven Software kind of trying to get rid of its QA testers, which honestly, that's just what happens, is QA testers get hired and then they get fired. That was always a scam, and apparently this scam is no longer going to work. So yeah, they may be now demanding full-time employment. Of course, hundreds of temporary workers could be out of thousands. So this might be Epic Games getting a cheap pop of good publicity, when in reality they still could be getting rid of a quarter of their QA testers. Yeah, that's totally believable. And then you just always, not to get into a rant because I definitely don't have time for it, I'm already 3 hours and 30 minutes into this. There's always this weird thought where people seem to want to bend over backwards to get away from the idea of, hey, let's just have universal basic income, let's just have universal health care, let's just tax the rich and fund the poor, services for the poor. People want to bend over backwards to the point where I think some people would find it a lot more palatable to have a law that demands employees, that demands people are guaranteed jobs, in a kind of weird communist idea where, like, under communism, everybody was guaranteed a job, not the job you wanted, and not at any kind of pay or fulfillment that you wanted, but you were definitely guaranteed work, to the point if you didn't work, you're probably thrown in jail. But I just don't think that's the way to think about it. That there's, frankly, a large percentage of people that just don't want to work, and then on top of that large percentage of people, there are a lot of jobs that people who do want to work don't want to work. There's plenty of kids that would love to be QA testers for video games. So that's kind of an interesting example, because if kids, 17, 16-year-olds, even if it was the 19, 18-year-olds, were guaranteed universal basic income, and then they could go get, let's say, minimum wage, let's say even below minimum wage, to be a QA tester, I think a lot of kids would be willing to do that for a while. Probably not their entire life or adulthood, but for a while. So yeah. That makes a lot more sense than this short-term solution, which is a solution. I won't disagree with that, to turn temporary employees into full-time employees, but the whole temporary employee system has always been created solely to be rife with abuse, and so that employees don't get benefits and that they can be fired at any drop of the hat. So yeah, if you were going to make the argument we should get rid of the temporary employee status for everybody, and while you're at it, definitely get rid of the independent contractor status for everybody, then yeah, things would be different. But not by much, because you have to come to reality and realize that most jobs don't want employees. They just don't. They don't want to deal with people. Bosses don't want to deal with people. Employees don't want to deal with bosses. If everything could be computerized and automated, which a lot of things can, everybody would be a lot happier. And it has been decades-long trends, if not centuries-long trends, in which we have seen pushes in every kind of business to reduce the number of staff. And nothing is going to change that. You can pass all the laws you want. You can criminalize firing people. You could have a French Revolution, but nothing really is going to stop that push, because it is such a natural and logical push that managers don't want employees. Employees don't want managers. Nobody really wants to work in those kinds of setups and environments. Nobody wants to be told what to do at all. It's very basic, logical things. So how do you fix that? We need to tear down the idea of businesses and employees and bosses as to a certain percentage, right? And the only real solution to that is universal basic income, maybe with some mandatory employee hours per week, where to get in the same way that unemployment exists now and you have to apply for new jobs in most cases, to get universal basic income, maybe you have to work 5 hours a week at some job and that's it. Like, that's way more palatable work on top of being paid some extra fun money. Of course, yeah, people don't want to do that. Politicians don't want to do that. They want to maintain the status quo. They want to protect their rich fundraising donors. And that's where the French Revolution probably has to happen, where we need major campaign reform, which is a whole different rant that I don't go into that often. But yeah. Guess we'll just play this card because I have to. Interesting. He plays Max Seed on that card for no reason. Okay. I can't do anything here. Moving on, we have about 30 more games that have come out. Here one is called Putridness, which looks a little too dark screenshot, too asset flippy as far as a horror shooter. So that's going to be no. Apparently it's VR also. Here we have one called Rabbit Canyon, which looks like nothing. So that's going to be no. Here we have something called The Day After the Snow and Wind, which that's Chinese only, so that's going to be no. Here we have a jigsaw puzzle game, which doesn't look terrible. 1001 Jigsaw Castles and Palaces. $2.99, 4 languages. It's not actually that bad of a jigsaw puzzle game from the looks of it. I guess the real question would be, the first game here came out in 2019. Did it have any relevancy? And I guess the answer there is no. Here we have a Chinese game that's looks like a mobile port. So that's going to be no. Oh, we have Pets VR, which there might be something to that. So I'll put that on the follow list. I am shocked I didn't die and lose. Just look at all these cards he's got on the field. Oh, we can't do anything, so end the turn. Here we have retro TV collection. Like, there was like a Magnavox and a lot of Magnavox clones that would play these different versions of Pong. Like this one has a wall on one side, and sometimes it has 2 paddles and 1 paddles, and things like that. This is 99 cents. There's really no reason why you would want to play these games. They were super simplistic, and they weren't even programmed. In most cases, they were hard-coded into the electrical transistors, which is a whole different kettle of fish to try and build something like that. And unfortunately, people that made LCD-style games like Game & Watch games that hard-coded things into the transistors quickly were kicked out of the industry, as programming was just such a better version of this. Here's another Furry Shakespeare game. Obviously, we'll say no to all of those. So, I would have needed to get at least 1 more loss and 1 win, which I'm not sure we've seen even a single win today, to get up to 10,000. But I have now 2 days to really grind it out as far as Yu-Gi-Oh! To get a bunch of legendary packs and a bunch of gems. And it does give you less rewards the more you play, because you're getting like a reward for every 1,000 points over here, but you were getting rewards for every 500 points down here, and then you were getting more rewards every couple hundred points down here. So it is definitely drying out. Yeah, it goes from 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, then 1,000, and then all of a sudden you need twice as much experience for that, from 1,000 to 2,000. Meanwhile, this is just taking a ridiculous amount of time. Let's see, we've got about 30 more games. Let's just burn through them quickly. This Mecha Guard doesn't look like there's much of a game here when all the screenshots are showing you the same background and the same enemies. It looks like it's a 1-screen game. Way too expensive also. Deep Night Runner. Looks like it's just an infinite runner, so no to that. Sold Dub, looks like nothing. Yeah, I'm gonna really stick to my guns today too, and just end this stream here. So if any new news has happened, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. This fishy business does not look like anything either. Jigsaw Beastery. And hopefully my program works. Works on Wednesday. The idea of custom art on jigsaw puzzles is interesting, but they've sold themselves pretty poorly by not actually showing you the custom art and only showing you the broken up parts of the puzzles. Otherwise it looks like it is not particularly difficult as a puzzle game, and not like there is that many puzzles, so it's still really a no. Yeah, I guess if you were an artist and you couldn't make a game but you wanted to make a video game, I could see people thinking making a jigsaw puzzle game and then using your custom art makes sense. It doesn't really, though, make any sense. If you're an artist and you can't do anything with video games, don't do anything with video games. Put out your art in a different form factor, as comic books or drawings, or just posts on, I don't know, does Instagram have an animation following? There's DeviantArt, I know that much, and there's several other different picture posting sites. Yeah, you're not going to make money posting your art alone like that. Mostly you're going to be looking for commissions or something like that. This Ruins and Switch does not look interesting as a game. But yeah, you can't just assume your one skill set is going to turn into a profitable video game. Steam Direct has really hurt people's grasp on reality, I think, a lot, as far as a lot of these low effort games. This cat following me probably isn't anything, but there might be something to this, so I'm gonna give it a follow. Here we have Learn Programming Python Remake, which, oh boy, does this not look like a video game to me. It would be kind of hard to teach any programming language directly as a video game. Yeah, but I have to look at this from the idea of a video game, and compared to like Human Resources Machine or Opus Magnum, which are much more simpler languages, they are animated to look like a game. What this looks like, this is probably bad. And personally, I don't agree with object-oriented programming as being taught, particularly in Python. I don't know if object-oriented programming makes sense. In a lot of ways, it looks like they may have just taken their book or stolen a book and tried to make it into a video game. Here we have a game called A Mustache in the House, which looks like nothing, so we'll say no to that. Yeah, if you're going to learn programming, just learn programming from a book. Use the actual software. Have Python installed on your computer. This game looks like nothing also. Don't try to put an extra layer on it. Even things like MicroPython and Scratch go too far, in my opinion, as far as trying to gamify something that just can't be gamified. Flipstown here also doesn't look interesting. Life on the Hook. Well, this looks pretty. This may just be a walking simulator. That's what it is, actually. But I'll give it a follow and see. See, Beat Motor. Is it some kind of rhythm Excitebike clone? Kind of have asset flipped characters in the background. You know, the concept's not terrible. That you would have to press a button on the beat, I assume on this red spot is best, to make a jump. But this kind of implies you can press any buttons you want once you're in the air to do more tricks, as long as you stay in the air. And the background here just looks really bad. It does just feel a little too low effort in its visual polish. Cubiet looks like a 3D Tetris game. Doesn't look terrible. Though I just don't think there's really something here I'd want to play. I'll be cautious and put that on the fall list. Fun Machine looks to be like a slot machine. Probably some mobile phone port. Does it have in-app purchases? No. I wouldn't mind a slot machine, but if you're going to make a slot machine game, you might as well make multiple slot machines. They're calling it a fruit machine simulator, which I don't know what that really means, and it does seem like there's just a ridiculous amount of different things that seem to pop up, even though it seems like it's all on one theme and one device instead of multiple slot machines. There are actually some, I think, decent slot machine simulators on cell phones, which would make more sense, even though they do have in-app purchases and real-world currency. Boat Simulator Apprentice here doesn't look like anything of interest. Dungeon Runner XY is already mixed, and I wouldn't have put it on the fall list anyways. On the Earth Shift does not look like anything of interest. Some VR free game. So that's way too cheap for a VR game. Another puzzle game. So obviously no. We've got 3 more. And then we have the Chronicles of Hercules, which is a match 3 game. Far too many of those games have already been made out of that series. Game called Blinky, which looks like nothing. Then our final game here is called Staple, which looks like some kind of weird stacking game. Game of reaction speed, it says. Stack rectangular figures as they go back and back, and it gets smaller and smaller every time you have an overhang. Okay. This is one of those things that, yes, could have been a decent mini game or like hacking mini game, but as its own standalone thing is not anything. Alright, well, we nearly went 4 hours. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.